So here we are in times of social distancing due to the coronavirus, on a journey of failures, as I've called it, riding out to Dernau. As you see, this video has no sound. I have imported it several times, but somehow between verb edit and iMovie, the sound gets lost. So be it. It's not the only thing that didn't work according to plan today. As we end the first climb to the village of Pech, I will use the opportunity, and this is Pech by the way, to tell you a little bit about the area we're going through. I'm traveling from the Rhine Valley to the Ahr Valley across the mountains, and there's 3 ranges that I will have to cross. Out of Godesberg, this is the first one to the village of Pech, and out of the village up another hill, that is the first climb. There's a little downhill between the first and the second climb by a castle called Dernau, and I'm approaching that. It's, you see to the right here. Unfortunately, there's a traffic light in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes that's red, as today, and so I lose all the momentum from the little downhill, because from here on the route is uphill, gently at first, and then it's a bit steeper. Let's take another look at the Dernau Castle here. You can't really see it there because it's protected from this first ring of buildings, but it's behind there. Very nice, surrounded by water, which a lot of these castles are as an element of protection. Now this uphill is a bit steeper. I usually take that in granny gear or one above. Simply because I don't really like to work hard. I just spin up and take it easy, put my arms out to get some extra cooling, which is nice on a rather sunny and warm day like this early spring Thursday. This is all farmland up here. A bit further on the route, we will get into the fruit and berry section of this region, but here it is just, plain farming, but very nice, very quiet today. This is the view back to Pech and to Bad Godesberg, but you can't see neither one of them because they are further down in the valley. Now the Garmin has warmed up enough to give me speed and elevation readings. You see that we're at 194 meters here. Bonn, where I started out, is at 53. So this is what we've been climbing so far. We will lose a bit of that as we go over the top of that little forest here, down into the next valley. And at the bottom of the valley is the village of Artsdorf. And like all of these valleys, the villages are at the bottom, and the uphill begins as you enter the village. But watch the downhill. It's a lot of fun, and that makes this trip so enjoyable, that you have these uphills, but then again you can fly down the hill on the other side. And we're going down, actually riding the other direction. This hill is much nicer because the uphill is more gentle than on the other side, the uphill that I just took. But here it's just good riding, between 55 and 60 kilometers an hour. That doesn't take much effort in the DF. And now another few meters down before we enter the village. And at the end of the little climb, there is another traffic light, which is always on red when I get there. And sure enough, today it will be on red as well. Actually, these villages are all very pretty. Lots of old houses still, and a number of them is very well kept, is restored to the original beauty, and that looks very nice. See, what did I tell you? Light is on red. Now, this is the next village coming up. In the distance there is Fritzdorf, and I need to go through Fritzdorf. We're going through it here. You see some of the old houses here are in not so good a shape. Others are pretty well maintained. That's how it is in these villages. They have rings of new buildings around them these days. We're past Fritzdorf now and going to Eckendorf. There's another downhill coming up beyond these power lines that we've just seen. And this is even nicer. That gets me up to 80 kilometers an hour or so without much pedaling needed at all, because it's just a beautiful downhill. And like before, once we get down to the village, well, the uphill begins, and I have to slow down, and I have to make sure that I can deal with any traffic that might be oncoming on that rather narrow village road we'll be going through. But, you know, except for these two cyclists, that's all very quiet today. Okay, that's already the next village, Vettelhoven, a few kilometers down the road from Eckendorf, and I have to go up in that village. I go around the village. The village is to the right. This dog goes crazy, probably the first time in his life that it sees a velomobile, and it has a castle which is actually to the right of this road. And from there, it's just another kilometer to the next town, Holzweiler. And you see me here going through the old part of it. It's again an uphill. And it is the third climb that I have to do. Out of this village, I can already have a first view at the destination. Which so far has always been concealed behind the moderate or lower ranges ahead of it. You see there, I will be pointing to it, and yeah, that's where I'm going. There's a gap in the mountain range that rises in the north and south of the Aar River Valley, and that's where we're going. That gap is the place where I will be descending into the Aar River Valley. But as usual, there's another little downhill to follow, because the next village is again down at the bottom of the hill. That village is called Esch, and I'll just pass through. And then there's a final moderate climb of, I think, about 2 kilometers or so, maybe 2.5, before I eventually go down to the Aar River Valley. So this is Esch. This is just rolling through. Today's no problem at all. Sometimes it gets a bit difficult because these roads are so narrow that 2 cars cannot pass. It's a bit more of an issue on Sundays, for example, when a lot of city people go out here, because it is so nice and so quiet. And of course, it is in the river valleys. It's wine-growing country, and that means plenty of festivities and tourism. Okay, now here we are at 265 meters. From now on, it's downhill to the river valley. The mountains you see on the horizon are already on the other side of the river valley. And here the landscape will soon change. We're going from rolling hills with farmland to vineyards rising steeply and high up on both sides of the river valley. I will stop at a scenic overlook because I wanted to give you some super nice drone shots of the valley, but unfortunately I didn't operate the drone right, so all I got is a picture, and I will show you that. But that's another one of the failures of today. Very disappointing. I took some beautiful flights over the valley, but nothing, absolutely nothing, came out of that. It's a shame, and I'm pretty embarrassed that I didn't do better. So here we are. This here is my DF overlooking the valley. That's a somewhat different perspective. And this now is the only picture I got from all of the drone flying that I did, which is really terrible. I also met two cyclists, and they are waiting for this video to see themselves struggling to climb up the hill here, and I promised them to put them into the video. Unfortunately, I can't because I don't have any footage, but this is life, and it goes on. As you see, it goes on with quite some speed, and the first hairpin turn, actually it's the only hairpin turn on this downhill, but this is a climb that I often do from out of the valley down there, and sometimes I ride down. Usually the ride down is not as nice as it is today because there's always traffic. You have to be on the brakes all the time anyway. Be sure not to overheat the drums. But you know, today it's a bit more fun because I have a good look of the road ahead, so I can kind of cut curves and fly down rather nicely. You see, as I go down, the elevation marks drops. We were at 265 up, and now we're almost 100 meters lower than that. Tells you how steep this downhill is, and tells you how much work actually riding the other way, the uphill, really is. So I'm catching up with two motorbikes following a Porsche car. I met them before I started out from the lookout. Now, as many people use this as a scenic road, they look to the left and right, so they don't go for speed here. And neither do I. Since the drone footage didn't work out, I added to this video a few more clips from my route further on, past Dernau, as I ride along the Aar River Valley. And as you can see, you see the vineyards here rising to the left. We will get pretty soon to a section where it is also very rocky. This is one of the features of this part of the Aar River Valley, that it is very rocky. This is volcano land, and the stone is actually one of the reasons why the wine is growing here, because the stone stores the sunlight and the sun temperature, and makes it possible to grow pretty decent red wines, Pinot Noir red wines, that far in the north. This is the most northern Pinot Noir red wine growing area in the world, I believe, and part is due to the special terroir, to the land here, to the volcano stone that you find here. You see, on the side that doesn't get that much sun, which is the right side here, you don't find vineyards. The vineyards are always on the northern side of this river, which basically flows in an east-west direction, because that side gets all of the sun when the sun sits in the south. And here you see a bit of the rocks that extend towards the road. Right next to me on the road, here in this shot on the left side, is the river, and opposite is already the next uphill. So the valley is pretty narrow. This is also nice. You see that actually the road here is cut into the rocks because the rocks rise almost vertically on the side of the road. Not always and everywhere, but in a number of parts. And here you see that a lot of the vineyards are terraced. That's the only way you can grow wine there, because otherwise it would simply be too steep. And it has been centuries of terracing these slopes on the in the Aar River Valley. Now, at the next traffic light, I have to turn off, because then it becomes a motorway, or sort of motorway, which is not allowed for bicycles. So I make a right turn here and take a parallel road through that next town called Walporzheim. One of the remarkable things about Walporzheim is it has a pub and restaurant, which is the white building that you see coming up there, this one here, St. Peter. It's been a restaurant since 1248, which is quite something, I would say. A couple of kilometers down is the town of Bad Neuenahr. It is a tourist place. There's also a lot of people coming there for medical treatments. And I take the chance to ride a rather scenic trail section right along the river, which, as you can see, is not a good idea on a weekend, because it's way too busy then. But on a weekday, particularly with the coronavirus keeping people indoors, it is a pretty nice section to ride. Here I'm already approaching the end of the Aar Valley. The mountains in the back are already on the Rhine. I waved to a truck driver who's been very kind. He didn't cut me when he merged from the right in the previous village, and he was patient enough on this little uphill to wait until he could safely pass by. Now this is the end. This is a triangle-shaped end of the valley where the Aar River mouths into the Rhine. I show you a bit of this because this was a major site, a detention site, where up to 250,000 disarmed soldiers of Hitler's Wehrmacht were kept by the American forces before the camp was transferred to the French and then dissolved, I think in July 1945. But imagine that, 250,000 people being kept here for a number of weeks out in the open, 75 years ago this spring. Today, a few memorials in the three villages or towns that neighbor this region remember this past of Germany's history. Now, here I'm approaching the Rhine Valley. You see the mountains in the back there. They are on the other side of the Rhine. The village coming up is Kripp, and I will ride into Kripp, turn left, and go to Remagen, the place with the famous Remagen Bridge, which is another one of those last moments of World War II war memorials. looking to the left here is a last view of the entry into the Ahr Valley and an overview of these Rhine meadows where prisoners of war were kept. This now is Remagen. Here I turn off and go down to the river trail again, and from here on I will ride a mixture between river trail and road, because oftentimes the road is the much better way to ride along the river than the trail, which is also next to the river but is a better footpath than a bike trail. I had stopped here because I had noticed a bump in the right front tire. There was a bubble building there, but I made it home. But 2 hours later, after I got home, the tire was flat, and actually the rubber was, I think, was cut in 2 or 3 places. It probably disintegrated. All right, here is the town of Oberwinter. Not very remarkable. It's to the left. It's pretty, but the road just passes by it. But in the distance, you see on the right the 7 mountains. These are my home mountains. That's where I do a lot of my riding, and that is one of the landmarks of many of my films is Dragon's Rock, which is the most forward-based rock overlooking the river, and crowned with the ruins of an old fortress. You see, it's good riding here. It's good speed, 52 kilometers an hour. Okay, it takes a little work, but this is not a downhill. So I'm warmed up now. This is, I think, some 65 kilometers into the ride. Here I'm down at the river trail. This is one of the last sections. This is Bon Melem. It's one of the southern suburbs of town, and is my home stretch. To the right here, not to be seen in the picture, is the Dragon's Rock. You see Dragon's Rock up there. It's the one with that tiny little dungeon up on the top. And here you see me almost home. And I have a little uphill to face here, and you see that biker ahead of me, and I win. I win that mountain challenge against him because I got more momentum. That's all. It's not that the DF is significantly faster on an uphill. It isn't. But with the right kind of momentum, you fly by even road bikers. All right, that's all for today. Many thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you will. Let me know how you like the no wind sound feature.